3 powerful tools to help with generalized anxiety disorder. So, if you feel anxious all the time, if you worry about a lot of different stuff, I mainly want you to know you can recover from this. People do recover from generalized anxiety disorder. So I want to start with this quote and this photograph. I've lived through some horrible things, and some of them actually happened. So let me know in the comments below if you relate to this quote. But there's a reason I love this quote, which is that it really describes how we actually live through the horrible events we make up in our head. We're actually physically experiencing them to a large extent, and yet they probably never happen. So to share the most powerful concept that will help you with generalized anxiety disorder, I want to show you these couple of little charts. But basically, let's say you are worried about an upcoming doctor's visit, a presentation you have to do at work, and the possibility of a recession, which the economic news loves to be talking about. Oh, we're about to have a recession. We're about to have a recession. And then you worry about it. Okay. Then you get through your doctor's visit. There's no problem. But you worry about a health issue that came up for your partner. And your project at work got finished, but now you're worried about the next project. And then you heard there's a snowstorm coming, so that's added to your worries. And then this one sibling of yours is drinking definitely too much, so that's become a bigger worry. And you're still a little bit worried about that recession, but it's kind of shrunk because these other things have taken its place. So this is a perfect description of generalized anxiety disorder, because what happens is that your anxiety wants to attach to something. So it will attach to a handful of problems. Then one of those problems gets solved. It attaches to another problem. Those 3 problems get solved. There's 5 more to worry about. Your anxiety will be scanning the horizon and looking for what it can worry about. So let's say you're in therapy and you go into therapy and you are worried about, and you talk through this whole issue about your partner's health. And then the next week you're talking about your parents aging. And then you're talking about this one project at work or this one difficult coworker. So you're talking about this problem and then that problem and then that problem. You will never get anywhere, because the problem is not the problems. The problem is anxiety. Let me say that again. The problem is not the problem that you're worried about. The problem is that you have anxiety. So that is really tool number 1 and major concept number 1 for getting over anxiety, is to recognize that you have something called anxiety, which is going to convince you that you have these other problems. It's going to keep the focus off of itself on these other problems, kind of because it wants to keep existing. And I know that might sound a little bit bizarre, but if you really think about it, your anxiety kind of lives within you. Like, some people feel like it lives in their stomach. Some people, it's definitely in their head. But we have to treat the anxiety. And part of treating the anxiety is first correctly diagnosing what the problem is. And the problem is anxiety. Now, I want to put a cautionary note in here. Let's not add worrying about your anxiety to the list of the things that your anxiety worries about, which I can easily see happen, right? But in order to treat the anxiety, we need to be aware of the anxiety cycle. And I just did a whole video that really goes into the CBT cycle with some examples of anxiety. So I can link that right here for you. But basically, being aware of how the thoughts contribute to your physical feelings and your emotional feelings, and then they contribute to behaviors that are usually either avoidant or compulsive, and all of it spirals. But once you're able to pause and say, okay, whoa, I got these 5 things and my mind is just going mad thinking about these 5 different problems in my life, and I go from one to the other, and I feel all those body chemicals. The second I say to myself, wait a second, this is anxiety, I almost can step outside that cycle. I can take a deep breath. I can label my thoughts. Labeling my thoughts helps me distance from them. I label them, this is anxiety. This is catastrophizing. This is worrying about something I have no control over. Because if you go back to those charts I was going through, all those problems there, pretty much almost nothing you can do about them. So you label it, this is not necessary. This is my anxiety. And you take a deep breath or you do something that can help you calm physiologically. So when you think through that cycle, right, of how the thoughts, behaviors, feelings all interact with each other, interventions can really happen at any point. And an intervention means you decide to do something different. You decide to step outside your normal cycle. But the easiest and best interventions are either to change how you think or something you're doing, how you're behaving. Recognizing that anxiety is actually a cognitive, behavioral, physical, and emotional pattern is extremely helpful. And then the second key tool here is to recognize that your anxiety wants to keep you safe. Your anxiety exists because it thinks it can do something to keep you safe. Your anxiety thinks it can do something about these things that you have no power over so that it can help you achieve the outcome you want. Like a lot of the time, we get really, really anxious because we want a particular outcome. And while that particular outcome might be our favorite, it might be what we really would like, we're not in danger if that outcome isn't achieved. Our lives aren't ruined if that outcome isn't achieved. But your anxiety gets caught up and it so wants that particular outcome, it totally stresses you out. But knowing that this anxiety developed for whatever reason and that it wants to keep you safe can help you treat it with a little bit more kindness and compassion, right? It is a part of you, but rather than like, rah, hating it, pushing it away, to be like, okay, anxiety. I see you're trying to keep me safe, but you're a little misguided because I don't really need adrenaline and cortisol to keep me safe at this moment. And I don't really need to project out into the future 7 steps when really there's only something I can do about step number 1 and number 2. So this tool number 2 of seeing that your anxiety is trying to protect you helps you think through whether you're actually in danger and in what way and what's happening right now and what is it you need to do right now about whatever problem happens to exist, or what is it you need to do right now to feel better. Now, treating all parts of ourselves with a little more compassion is really key to healing. And knowing that very often we develop particular anxieties or particular anxious thought patterns because of things that happened when we were very young. Now, it could just be that I was born into a very anxious family. I learned it by osmosis. Everybody in my family is anxious. Or it might have been a particular trauma that really exacerbated your feeling of not being safe. Or maybe it was a general atmosphere of not feeling could be emotionally safe or physically safe. But as children, if we don't feel emotionally safe, that actually is a threat to our existence in many ways because we are totally dependent on other people. So in working with people as a therapist over 20 years, I found that if after a few months of cognitive behavioral therapy, a client was not able to implement some of the changes, it generally went back to a core negative belief. And I do have a free PDF on Transform Your Negative Core Beliefs. It helps you identify what your negative core belief might be. And then it gives you 3 practices to overturn that belief. But very often for people with generalized anxiety disorder, there was some core negative belief of not being safe. And while most adults who have anxiety will be like, well, I know I'm not in physical danger. You may know you're not in physical danger, but that way back there, the primitive brain and the emotional brain, they are acting as if you are in physical danger when you have a high degree of anxiety. So this part of your brain is like, yeah, no, I don't really feel like I'm in danger. But that's what this part of your brain believes, and that's what is driving the anxiety. So when you understand that, oh, my anxiety is trying to keep me safe, but it's using outdated methods of doing so, or it's using methods that just don't make sense, I can then engage my frontal lobe to be like, okay, what's needed here? Maybe it's problem solving. Maybe it's just turning over to the universe what I have no control over, but I can engage this part of my brain to help myself calm down and emotionally regulate. And then tool number 3, this is my favorite tool, and it's a little bit of fun, but it's to create a cartoon character that represents your anxiety. For whatever reason, the Tasmanian devil always comes to my mind. I know that probably dates me because that's probably not a familiar reference for many people. But come up with a cartoon character or make one up. Make up the image of what your anxiety looks like. I had a client whose anxiety was a, figurine of a female with hair sticking out, glasses, moving all the time, gesturing. That's what her anxiety looked like. So come up with a picture of your anxiety, put it on your shoulder, and when your mind goes into all those worries, oh no, what's going to happen at work? What's going to happen with this presentation? Oh no, my sister's drinking too much. What do I do? Do I say something? Do I not say something? What if she gets hurt? What if? Put it into the mouth of this character on your shoulder, knowing that this character is also calling out alarms to try to keep you safe, but you're safe enough right now. You're safe enough right now. There might be problems, there might be problem solving that's needed, but putting this into the voice of a character and a picture of a character really helps you separate from all those anxious thoughts. All right, let me know what your character looks like. I'd love to know. And let me know if these techniques are helpful for you. I'll see you next week.